A lot of economics in terms of macroeconomic moves that the United States government does and balances along with the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve over the years have been a hodgepodge job. I mean, just like if you talk about diplomats world over, they will say that the United States policy is pretty transactional in nature. You cannot have a long-term relationship or long-term commitment in terms of anything that the United States would promise in terms of relationship to the nations. Something similar happens in the lines in terms of economics as well, because you see that in order to keep the US dollar as the fiat reserve currency model all over the world, what has happened in the last 50 years is that we see an internal cycle of quantitative tightening and quantitative easing. These cycles go on within United States, and these cycles determine a lot of fate for the rest of the world, because rest of the countries, any country who's not going to be able to buy energy in their own currency automatically becomes a financial colony for the United States. And that is what we have seen in the last 40, 50 years. So, in order to balance out when the rest of the world parks its savings in the United States dollar, United States stocks and treasury, what happens is that United States also have to do some kind of a cycle. And that is what the quantitative easing and the quantitative tightening is all about. So this hodgepodge goes on along with the investments and the savings parkings which the rest of the world do, and that cycle is what we call as the United States Treasury and the United States dollar. So it's a reflection of USD investments and withdrawals, which determine the cycles of quantitative easing and quantitative tightening within United States for the purpose of the internal economy. Which is why you see, if you analyze the last 2 years, especially after Biden took office, you will realize that anything which the Federal Reserve comes and talks about. I mean, if I'm talking about Jerome Powell, because he is in office, so anything that he is going to talk about, there is no kind of sense of stability with what he says. I mean, 2 years back, if you just look at all the Fed meeting outcomes of the Fed meeting in terms of the statements that they give after the Fed meetings, if you check out 2021, you will find Jerome Powell saying, "Oh no, the inflation won't come." From there, it traveled to a little bit of inflation might come. Oh no, there is no recession now. A little bit of recession might come. So this hodgepodge goes on and on, which is why their policy also flip flops. Oh no, we will stop increasing the interest rates. We will be pivoting. So this is exactly what we have seen over the years that is happening, especially after the Biden term. The flip flops have increased, not in terms of short term and medium term policies, but even long term policies. I mean, there is no end to the kind of financial collapse that is coming towards. So viewers must visit my handle, which is visible on the screen right now. You will find a whole chunk of information on how uh, the countries of the world are proceeding with the de-dollarization. And this politics, which has recently turned in the last week in terms of the speaker selection, is what I see it as a hodgepodge in terms of when exactly the collapse should begin. I think that is the internal churn between the whoever the powers to be in the United States, who are the main decision makers, who are leading this governance model. I think that's where their confusion lies in terms of when exactly the collapse should begin. And when I'm talking about collapse, what I mean is that the accumulated reserve currency status bubble in the US stocks, bonds, and derivatives, when exactly they are going to prick that bubble balloon with a needle. That's what I mean when I say the confusion is about when they want to burst this bubble and start the collapse. So that's where it is. So Aditya ji, you need to understand that when the fish is entering the trap, you're not going to stop the fish, right? So it's not just about Google or Microsoft. We have Airbus, we have Boeing, we have Raytheon, we have General Electric, right? General Atomics. All these United States biggies companies are not just tying up to my knowledge and my understanding of geopolitics, these companies are actually going to settle in India by the end of this decade. And it makes sense in terms, not just in terms of profits of business, but it makes sense in every perspective, in terms of, you say, the value systems between the population of the two countries, the kind of cooperation which is possible between the population of two countries and the government going down, I mean, one decade down. I think looking at all of that, these companies are very much interested. I mean, just I was just looking at a new policy wherein, Oxford, Harvard, all these big Ivy League colleges are now to be allowed opening up campuses, not just being allowed to opening up campuses in India, but they are also being allowed to have their own system of assessments for exams, and a freedom to issue certificates in terms of courses, certificates and degrees in terms of courses equivalent to the Indian education system. So I look at it as, a lot of cream American knowledge systems shifting towards India, shifting and going to settle in India by the end of this decade. And this was very obvious because India has always been the hub of education, and this is not something new. I mean, ancient India had this university campuses in the mandirs, in the temple campuses, where, the foreign students would die in their way to travel to take to seek admission, getting filtered out and getting admission in in Indian universities. So this is not something which is what we are seeing as new, but this is where it is heading towards, certainly heading towards. There's no doubt about it. None of the American or the Western, uh, would I say, a cream institute of repute would have that kind of reception or that kind of acceptability in any other geography other than Indian. Which is, and this is not just about acceptability, it's also about what kind of future collaboration that is possible along with the Indian populace, which is the youngest population in the world right now. I mean, the next 3 decades, we are going to become the richest economy in the world. We are going to sit back on the throne, as I say, 2047 is our year. We are going to sit back on the throne which always belonged to us. For 1700 years, it had been the case. So, who will not be interested when, especially when, you see the Western countries are aging. They do not have younger working population anymore. So, where are they going to invest? It's obviously India.